Okay. Hi, Ewan. Welcome to Midgard Times. How are you?
Very good. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, of course, the pleasure is all mine. First of all, congratulations. Assi is a terrific movie, and it's very rare to find a good mainstream movies nowadays. And I think you and Anubhav Sinha have hit the jackpot once again. So thank you for the film and congratulations. So how are you feeling right now, if you can tell me?
Well, I think regarding the reception of the film, I don't think we could ask for anything better, really. I think we've had amazing response. I think the most important thing about the response we've had is that people are reading the film more or less as we had intended it, which is always the greatest success.
Even I'm I'm also very happy with that fact, because it this is also a kind of a rare phenomena. So again, congratulations for that. Okay, so let me begin by asking you a kind of a dumb question, but the reason I'm asking you this is because whenever I talk to people about movies, and these are movie buffs, and whenever we discuss movies, and the only time they talk about cinematography is when they describe a film which has, beautiful scenery, like mountains and all that. So this is why I want to begin this interview by asking this question: what does cinematography mean to you? How would you define it?
I would describe if I'm defining cinematography, I think it's the management of color, light, and movement of the camera, let's say, to uh, promote and provoke feelings and thoughts on behalf of an audience in a visual way. And that encompasses many different elements. Sometimes we talk about the camera, sometimes we talk about the lighting, sometimes we talk about visual effects. I think those things are technical achievements on their own, but it's not cinematography unless you are making the audience feel or think something.
Are you annoyed by this generic definition when people often say that cinematography means they will describe a scene with a beautiful scenery and they will say, "Oh, what a gorgeous cinematography." Are you annoyed by these generic statements?
No, I don't think so. I think that many of us who work behind the camera, all different departments, you're serving the story, you're serving the author of the story, and like I said, if the movie is taking you on an emotional journey, I'm not really interested in which department gets recognition or not. That's why we're all doing it. And often I think if somebody is talking about the cinematography in a primary way, I think maybe that is reflecting a lack of engagement with the story and the emotion and the thoughts in the story rather than appreciating something. Maybe you're missing something actually because your first thought is you're talking about what the camera is doing, and that's not really why we're here. We're here to talk about what the characters did on their journey.
Yeah, so basically, in a good film, these all elements are, invisible. You just engage with the story.
You should be engaging with it, and I think the better a job we do in our behind the camera departments, the less we'll be spoken about, really, if you're really engaged. Yeah.
Okay, so can you tell me how did you become a cinematographer? Did you go to film school and was there a formal education? How did you enter there?
I I studied English writing at university, and then I went on a journey of 3 or 4 years of working in the real world, you can call it. I sold financial information. I worked at a hedge fund. I marketed records. I worked in a PR firm for restaurants, and none of that felt satisfying. And after 2 or 3 years, or 3 or 4 years of that, I decided to go do what I actually always wanted to do, which was to make films. And so I went to film school. I didn't know anybody in the cinema industry at all, so it was always going to be, I had to do something like that because I had no way in. I didn't know anyone. So I went to film school. I was a director all the way through film school, actually. And then right at the end of film school, a few friends started asking me to shoot their graduation films. And I think that was because I had been a quite visual director, and I was very interested in what the camera and the lights were doing. And then once I started doing that work for other students, I think I really found my tribe. I really fell in love with that part of the work, and it had none of the parts of the work which I found more difficult about directing, even though directing is magical. Um, there's something a little bit lonely about it, and I like teams, and I love having a team. I love the huddle, and so I really found that once I started doing that work, and then I was off to the races. It was only camera for me from then on.
So did you ever find a role model you gravitated towards, and did you learn something from them that you applied to your own job?
Personal role models. I mean, I will say my film school gave me an entry into the education of the technical learning and a little bit of theory. I'm not certain it was so great at connecting us to the outside world. I a little bit had to start by myself afterwards with the knowledge I'd gotten in film school. I'd had a few meetings with a very great cinematographer called Seamus McGarvey, um, and he had given me some wonderful advice along the way about how to feel my way into a story and what's important in our work. But I wouldn't go so far as to say that he was a mentor or anything. It wasn't a very long relationship. And then after that, I would do my own learning, read as many books as I could about cinematography, interviews with cinematographers, magazines, study every behind the scenes video I can find. Anything on YouTube was only starting at that point, but once YouTube started to have behind the scenes stuff on it, and I gobble that up. I'm addicted. I'm addicted to it. And then I think eventually, once you start working with better and better directors, those have been the people I've learned the most from, because they are able to give you a guide on what's actually important and what's actually going to make it into the film, and how to think about how to shoot for an edit, how to shoot for the story, what's serving the characters, not just what's serving my show reel, which you learn pretty quickly is not very important. Yeah, so that's how I learned.
So, I was going through your IMDb page and I saw you have worked in both Bollywood as well as quite a many British productions. So, I was curious. I just wanted to know that how do you find what differences or similarities do you find between these two industries?
Well, I will say I have two interesting different perspectives on it. I work in like high-end television and long form television in the UK more, and cinema in India more, and so there are those differences. But in the end, it's the same job. You'll serve the story, you'll serve the material. You have to do a certain number of shots per day. You have to light them. The particular technical solutions in the two different countries are different. They come from different traditions. Um, and I've learned enormous amounts doing both. I have to say, I take back what Indian crews do, for example, with rope and cable. To speak very specifically about something is magic. It's incredible. The the achievements, how to put a very heavy light somewhere, a strange camera rig somewhere up in the air, and they do it without huge mechanical aids often, and that has been fascinating. And I've taken that back with me because I now know what's possible because I've done that in India, and the Indian crews have shown me how. I think there are different aesthetic traditions in both places, and you have to manage your own expectation of how much you can place yourself into each aesthetic tradition, and you have to understand in yourself, why have I been brought in to do this work? Obviously they're looking for something from you, from your perspective. That's why you've been hired in either country, but you also have to a little bit play by the rules and the aesthetic traditions of those places, because what you want to do is communicate with the audience where they are. You don't want to alienate the audience by saying this is how we do it somewhere else, it's better. That's no good. You're looking for sympathy and empathy between the filmmaking and the audience. And I think so. Yeah, so obviously, as we know, like India has different color traditions. They're brighter colors, more saturated. The light levels are generally brighter in the work you find on average in India. I think a little bit I've probably been brought in because my um, personal aesthetic is maybe a little darker, or a bit less saturated, and maybe there's an interesting mixture when my perspective meets the material in India. And in the same way, the the material I've been shooting in the UK has been really um, impacted by my work in India. People are always impressed by the amount of color that I'm willing to risk on British productions, and the how do I say the ease of expression through images that the Indian aesthetic has, where the British filmmaking tradition is much more based in screenwriting and dialogue to move information. And I've taken back that feeling of expression from my work in India to my work in the UK, and people are enjoying that. And so that's the fun of moving those two feelings back and forth. I think is maybe better at both, really.
Wonderful. So, you have been working as a cinematographer for so long. So, are there any visual cliches that you actively try to avoid?
That's a very interesting question. There are things that one doesn't want to do at specific points in a career, I think. I will find myself this year, for example, I don't know why, I'm finding myself allergic to sequence construction, which is someone sees something and you show what they saw. For example, right now, that's a big bugbear of mine. I find it impossible to justify doing it. I find other ways of solving that storytelling. But that's now. That's not always how I've been, and that's not um, where I'll be in 10 years. I don't know that. I think I don't even know whether there are cliches per se. There are so many movies. That's another thing I've learned working in two places. There are so many movies. There are so many stories. They've been told so many different ways that the only cliche that you have to avoid, I will say, is using a solution from somebody else's movie to solve a problem that you're solving in yours. The solutions from your film should be what the material requires. And if what you do is use a shortcut by stealing, I don't mind borrowing, but by relying on other people's solutions, your movie becomes synthetic. The audience can tell that you don't quite understand your own story. And I think, yeah, so I think I don't actively avoid cliches. I think what I'm more and more trying to do is prevent myself from taking the easy road, which is to use something that works somewhere else just because it works. It needs to work for the story.
Okay, so let's come back to Anubhav Sinha. So, I'm curious, how did you first meet him and how did this collaboration happen? I'm very curious. You are there, uh, you are there in UK and he's here in India. I mean, how did you meet? How did the collaboration happen? Who reached out to whom first? Can you tell me about
My my meeting with Anubhav is it's basically the luckiest thing that has ever happened in my professional life. It was pure chance. I had been shooting a little bit of second unit for Hindi cinema in the UK before I had met Anubhav. And I had really gotten along with the producers, and somehow we found that we vibed with each other, even though I was not a full cinematographer very often yet, especially not in features. And the line producer of one of those films was line producing the UK leg of Tumbin 2. And he said to me, they're looking for a UK cinematographer, possibly. They'd like to meet some. And I said, oh, that's really interesting, and I'd love to meet this person because you always want to meet someone. And it just so happened that I was on vacation in India with my partner on a completely unrelated thing, nothing to do with film. We were on a month-long tour of South India for fun. And he said, if you're in India, you should go meet him. And so he set up a lunch between me and Anubhav at the Banaras Media Works office, the last one they had, not the current one. And Anubhav, being the amazing host that he is, had organized a big lunch for us. We'd never met each other. We didn't know each other's work. I mean, I knew what Anubhav had done a little bit. And we sat down and we had lunch. and we just kind of vibed and got along. And I'm not sure we even talked about movies at all. I think we just had fun. We had a great lunch. We both love food. We both love movies. Obviously, we both love in our way, like politics and these things, and just got along great and had a brilliant lunch and didn't talk about whether I had the job or didn't, or even if there was a job mostly. And I went on my way. And then a couple of weeks later, this line producer called me and said that Anubhav really had a great time with you. He's seen some of your work. Would you like to try? And I said, okay, of course, this sounds great. And then they came over to the UK. We shot Tumbin 2 in Scotland. And yeah, we were off, I guess. That was it. That's history.
So did you like your India tour when you were
Yeah,
touring there?
yeah. It was amazing. I was at a wedding in Goa, and then we had gone all around the south. Um, Fell in love with it. I'm big on travel. I mean, I don't think you could do such a career in India without loving traveling around. It's a great place to learn about. Yeah.
You and this Anubhav Sinha, you first joined hands together, I think in Tumbin 2. And after that, there is Mulk and Article 15 Anek and all that. So, you go from something like Tumbin to Mulk, and you know that the Anubhav Sinha you get from Mulk is what some people call Anubhav Sinha 2.0, because there's Anubhav
Mhm.
Sinha before this making some stuff, and then there's this Anubhav Sinha who is just politically charged, who is just just using his medium to wake up the audience and all that. So how do you see this shift in this filmmaker going from this Tumb into this love story to suddenly you are in this courtroom drama, and then there's a movie about caste discrimination and all that. So what is your perspective on this?
Well, I have an interesting perspective because I was like the last guy on the bus because before Anubhav turned into Anubhav 2.0, as you call it, he had this giant career, these amazing movies before I had met him at all. And so I don't have a very good perspective on the first Anubhav Sinha because it was clear to me while we were making Tumbin 2, no doubt we were all doing a professional job and doing it as well as we could, that the things we would talk about when the camera wasn't rolling was not the subject matter in Tumbin 2. It was the subject matter more of Mulk or of some other film. That's what we would talk about in our spare time or at a restaurant at night after shooting or whatever. And so I feel like I never even got to really meet the last Anubhav. He was already on that road. I mean, it wasn't long after Tumbin 2 that we did Mulk. We finished Tumbin 2. He called me quite soon after. He said, I've got this other thing. It's completely different, but I'd like you to join me. And when he told me about it, I thought, yeah, that seems like a better fit to the guy I know. You know what I mean? He may always have been Anubhav 2.0 and making these other kinds of films. I can't speak to that. I didn't know him.
But you got the best version of Sinha, I must say. you. So, I was doing some research on you, so I came across this website and I found this, and I'm quoting from this website. It 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 was written. It was actually describing your cinematography process. So this I found this line. Beyond Anubhav Sinha, Ewan Mulligan contributed to Tuesdays and Fridays, a Netflix romantic comedy, applying his expertise to capture subtle emotional nuances in urban Indian settings. So I wanted to know, how do you capture this subtle emotional nuances? There's the writer who comes with the script, there's the actor who does his stuff, and the director, he selects the shots which he wants to put in the movie. So how does the cinematographer then come here and capture this subtle nuances? If you can explain that.
So the very first thing is you have to know which are those nuances that you're trying to capture. Because it's not, I think, like capturing butterflies. It's not really like that because we're making fiction, and great fiction, I think, almost always has intent. And so we will know what are these nuances before we get there on the day if we've done our preparation correctly. You know, we've talked about the script at the table for days, hopefully weeks, if you have a good relationship with the director and they don't mind you taking so much of their time. And you will have a very clean map of this is what we're trying to capture in this scene, this is what we're trying to capture in this other scene, and you'll prepare for it. You'll make sure that if what you're trying to do is isolate a character from the rest of his surroundings, and that alienation is something you want to feel, you'll have the right wide angle lens with the correct close focus and these things to have the camera be able to rest there without too much distortion and to project the rest of the world away from them in the background. That's a For that you have to have a plan, because without a plan you won't have the right equipment on set. And I'm not a big equipment guy. Like I concentrate on the script and the story, and then the equipment solution will follow, because if you know it well enough, then there's the right lens. It isn't just choosing between all these lenses, there's the right lens. Um, so I think that's really the answer. It's like really good preparation with the director, really understanding where are we trying to go. And I think to do this job really well, you have to be a bit of a like a Sherlock Holmes, because you can ask a director what are they trying to do, and they might be able to tell you 76% of what they're trying to do, but they themselves haven't necessarily dug out the last tiny detail of it. And also it's a process. Every film is a discovery also as you go through the process, so they may not have the answer yet. Or more interesting, and the best part of my job, I think, is they absolutely know what they're trying to express, but they don't necessarily have the vocabulary for it yet. And that interpretation, trying to like suck an idea out of someone's brain and turn it into a photograph without exchanging the exact words, that's really fun. And that's only comes when you get to know a director, when you know what really turns them on, and you know after after they've told you six different ideas aren't quite working, but this one's a little more attractive, but actually that's not really what I'm trying to do. You start to get a sense of their subconscious. And that's when it gets really interesting, because now you're turning their subconscious, which is like the rawest, most interesting stuff actually, into a photograph. And that's magic. Like that's alchemistry, you know what I mean? Some kind of, we don't all know how we get there. We do our best to do that thing, and sometimes it's really good, and sometimes it doesn't quite work. But so that's what I think it is. It's investigation, but that only comes once you've asked 1,000 questions over 100 cups of coffee, and then you know where you're going. But yeah, I don't think it's not like documentary. I don't think you're not trying to capture a thing that's just happening. You got to make it happen.
So, I was going through one of your interviews that you gave during the release of Article 15, and I found this line that you employed a deliberate shooting schedule in pre-dawn and post-sunset magic hours to evoke mystery and marginalization for lower caste characters, contrasting them against brightly lit scenes for those in power, thereby visually reinforcing the film's examination of caste discrimination. So I have two questions. First one is, when do you choose natural light over controlled setups? Second question, what steps did you take in Assi to elevate it visually?
Okay, so it's not always your choice about natural light versus artificial light. Every film has budget constraints and scheduling constraints, and that's the nature of it. You do the best you can in each sandbox that you're playing in. Each film is different. I think I work a lot in natural light. I've made it a thing in my career, and it takes a lot of trust from the production, from the director, from the actors also in you, that you can produce the material before the light changes. So they firstly have to trust that you're able to do it, and then also they have to kind of go down the road with you, which is you're going to spend quite a lot of effort getting ready for this, which is not, and it's not always the way we do it. Quite often directors will like to land on set, rehearse, block the scene with the actors, then we might talk about what shots might cover it best. That's another way. But working in natural light, you can't really work that way, because the light is determining when you shoot. So that is that's a trust thing. I have that relationship with Anubhav after so much time now. Not every director would necessarily want to work that way, but there's also, once you've done it a few times, there's such a fizz and an electric feeling when you know that everyone has prepared so well and everyone is together, the whole team, and everyone has to do it right now. And when it happens, there's no feeling like that because everybody knew that they had to bring the best part of themselves in that moment, and that's just wonderful. Um, the second part of your question was about Assi, but specifically what?
What steps did you take in C to elevate it visually?
Well, Assi is a really interesting movie for me because when you're coming up in a career, you're often trying to show what you can do, you know? And Assi was a film which for me was of such serious nature that almost the whole project was trying to strip away the interface between the audience and the characters. So much of what we were doing was how do we make this basically a piece of glass? I don't want stylistic choices on top of stylistic choices to make abstract points here. I want you to just understand what Tapsi or Kanikusruti is feeling right now. I want you to be there with them, which was a new approach for me and Anubhav actually, and I loved it. One thing we did do that was an aesthetic choice, but I think we really wanted to serve the narrative this way was we decided to shoot men and women on different formats. So part of my understanding of this problem that we're treating in Assi is that it's not just there's an aggressor class and a victim class, although there is men and women. At the heart of the problem, you have these two genders who simply on this subject do not see the world the same way. A lot of the time. I can't speak for everyone. No film can. And so I started thinking about how can I actually have the two genders in this movie live in different universes, but still have it seem like the same movie. And we tried lots of different things. We saw will we do color grading different for the two genders? Will we shoot some people on anamorphic and some people on spherical lenses? And what we settled on eventually was we shot everyone on the same camera, which was an Alexa large format. We shot everyone on the same lens, which was a large format Cook S2, I think. But what we did was we shot all the women, all the shots of the women in the movie are shot with on a large format sensor, and all the shots of men in the movie are shot on a Super 35 sensor, all of them, which was quite maddening for our camera team. You know, very hard to keep track of. But what it did was it forced the geography of the storytelling towards the women and dragged it away from the men. So if you have a conversation, the two of you right now, we're in similar frames. We're like a medium close-up, the two of us right now. And in the film, maybe we cut between a man medium close-up and a woman medium close-up. But the physical geography of the camera was different to generate that edit. The camera would actually have been closer to the female character and further away from the male character. And I think what it did was force the sympathy of the film towards the female characters, but hopefully invisibly. I think it was. I have not seen anybody write about that, so I think we've done that successfully. That was like the big creative choice that we made. Apart from that, you know, most of the light is white and natural feeling. We tried to have a camera that flowed quite well. That the camera is often driven by the characters. If the characters are moving, the camera might move. But instead of having the author move the camera towards or away from a character, there aren't really push-ins or pull-outs. So those kinds of like showy camera moves in the movie, we kind of decided to kill all of those very early. If someone's speaking, we point the camera at them and we let them speak. You know, the other thing that happened not as a design choice from the beginning, but actually happened over the course of it was we slowly over the first week or two were discovering that we were using more and more point of view shots. And once we discovered that we were using more and more point of view shots, we decided to like actively employ them more and more for the same reason, to just get rid of the interface between the viewer and the filmmaking. Like the characters are often talking to the audience straight at them. And it seems to work pretty well. I like the effect of it. There's a scene late in the film, maybe it's the sixth hearing, basically the scene before the judge makes her ruling. And we shot the entire scene in two shots. It's a close up of her and it's her POV. And it's a very complex piece of
Yeah.
drama.
Mm.
But it's one of the scenes I'm proudest of that I've ever shot because it is so clean and clear in the storytelling intention, which is what are the things this judge is taking into account and what will she decide? That was it. Even though there's many things happening and hundreds of people in the room and huge drama. So yeah, I think the lens choices and the POVs were the two big creative choices. And apart from that, we tried to stay out of the way, really.
You know, and now that you talked about, I found it interesting that how you spoke about how you frame men and women differently in the film. So it reminded me of that one take scene between Tapsi and the police officer where he beats a man about giving a false confession. And it's a one take, it moves here. And so this might be a dumb question, but I just, because you talked about how you framed them differently. So I wanted to know how did you and Sinha plan this scene?
That, well, specifically in terms of the lens choice and the format choice, we had to make choices, of course, when men and women share the frame, which isn't that often actually, but sometimes they do. And also when there are men and women in the same scene, which happens a lot. And it basically became that if there's a man and a woman in the same shot, we had to assess who is driving the drama here. Who is the driver of the story? Not necessarily who has power over each other, just who has power over our interest and where do we want the audience to concentrate. And that was what would have driven the selection of the format for that shot. So that shot would have been done large format because it's very much Topsy's character driving us there, interrogating her surroundings, interrogating the circumstance, and driving us away. So that was a clear choice for that. In terms of why one shot, you know, I think you can only do long shots like that when you are certain there's enough drama to fill it, when you're certain there's enough turns in the scene to keep it interesting. Because, an edit is a really powerful tool. I'm not for long takes for the sake of it. I love edits. I love planning for them. So that scene had enough going on with it. She's arriving. Where is she? Who is she meeting? Oh, it's him. Oh, look at the state he's in. Now what's in his car? It's a person in his car. Now that person's gone away. Now how Topsy is reacting is not necessarily how we would assume she's reacting to all of this. And I think she's completely wonderful in that scene. And so it seemed like a good candidate for a single shot because it had so many turns in the drama in that small scene that we thought we'd try it. But it just felt right in the moment doing it that way. I think we may have planned to do a few more shots than that. But sometimes if you know the story well enough and the staging is opening itself up to you, you say, okay, let's try it in one take. And if we need more shots, we'll do more shots. But at the end of I don't know which take we used, but at the end of whichever one is in the film, we thought that's great. Let's go home.
So before I move on to a very serious question, I just want to quickly ask this. Is there a type of lighting setup that you secretly love but you rarely get to use?
Oh, interesting. I love lighting with fire. I love it, but only very few films, have any reason to do it. I think that's really fun to light with fire. There's something about how it dances around and the how you can't depend on it, and all of a sudden the scene goes dark, and at a moment you don't know it's going to happen. Something about that like lack of control I find fascinating. I've just done a film where I finally got to use a bunch of fire, and it was really fun to do that. You get so much surprising stuff when you're not completely in control of the light, and that was really fun.
Okay, so the serious question I was asking you, and it's this that what, how did you and Sinha, plan that rape scene, in Assi? And because a scene like that, if you are irresponsible as a filmmaker, a scene like that can come across as exploitative, sensational, even titillating. So how did you and Sinha approach this sequence, and how long did you sit on it, plan it, execute it? What measures did you take? How careful were you when you were filming that scene?
Extremely careful. I mean, yeah, that was the big event of this schedule, and we took a number of steps, I think, to make sure we knew what we were doing with it. The first thing was we scheduled it right at the end so that we knew what our movie was by the time we got to it. You know, we've seen assemblies, we know what the film is, whether the film is effective enough to support a scene like that, because I think you can't put a scene like that in a movie that isn't serious the rest of the time, you know? So we could make that assessment once we had been filming for 2 months already. No, we've got what we believe is a serious movie, a serious, responsible movie on this subject that we've worked hard on. Okay, let's continue with the plan. I think that scene also was that scene was there from a very early draft. I'm lucky now I get to see early drafts of Anubhav's films because we've been working a while together. And that scene was there from an early draft, so we got to sit with it a very long time. There were no rash decisions. You know, it was for months and months we knew what that was going to be. And how much do you show? How much do you indicate is happening? Where do you point the camera? I mean, where do you point the camera is always an issue, but especially in a scene like this. In this scene, weren't really interested in showing like the physical effect on the victim, although I think that there is a really effective subliminal projection of that. Johnny's not in very many shots in that scene. It might be like 3 out of hundreds. So that I think was good. We said we don't need to do that. What we need to do is give a really clear indication of what is happening rather than point the camera at what is happening necessarily. But also, this movie is not only about that. This movie is also very largely about who are these people who are doing this? What is their motivation? What is their headspace while they're doing it? Not in any way to justify what they're doing it, but to try to understand, because without understanding, there's no solving anything. Um, and so that's why we basically pointed the camera at the boys, who I think did an amazing job. It was a really difficult couple of days for them because you're doing something that's really awful and you have to stay professional while you're doing it. I thought they did an amazing job actually to keep it together. Um, we also decided to not shoot this out on the road. You know, we shot it in a studio. We took a lot of care. We shot really careful plates of Delhi streets long before we went into the studio. We calibrated an LED volume exactly to match those plates. And we have interactive lighting on the floor so that you have a calm, safe, quiet space to play that scene. Um, and that was very clear early on what we should be doing, but the specific technical solutions had to be worked out. But that was always really important. There should be nothing. There should be nothing that we can't control on the day. No low loaders, moving cars, traffic stops, nothing. It should only be about the intimacy of that moment and the the portrait of what it's like to do something like that. Yeah.
Those balls, they scared me very much when I was watching the movie in the theater. And what got to me was that counting. They were counting how much, uh, which boy can last longer, and just shook me there. And I remember everybody in the theater, they suddenly, you could feel the silence in the theater. Everybody was just clenching their seat, they just wanted it to be just the scene to move forward, just get it over. Yeah. So, it really affected everyone.
Yeah,
So, yeah. So I think you have kind of answered my this next question. I basically wanted to ask you, do you get to read the script before the shooting or not? Does it happen?
yeah.
Because I
You
wanted
always get to read it before, but some people give you a sneak peek.
because I wanted to ask this because as a cinematographer, if you are reading the script, certain visual elements might be coming in your head. You also might be bringing some perspective. Okay, this scene might look like this. This might look like this. But when you go on the set, the director, the captain of the ship, and he's telling, no, I want to shoot it this way. So, has there has there ever any conflict between you and the director about a particular scene, and you wished, okay, I wish the scene were shot my way and not another way? Has something like that happened to you?
Sure, it has, but not in a while. I think you do those things when you start because you also when you're starting you haven't made many movies, and so you're trying to pour all of your great passions and influences into every film that you're making, and eventually you make enough movies that you know that each film should be unique. Um, yes, that has happened. I don't know if it's like I wish it was my way or their way. I think what happened in the early days, if that ever happened, was that you're less experienced and you're less good at preparation. You're less thorough because you're learning what's required. That I don't think that has happened to me in a very long time because I'm very clear to present to a director very early, like clear, like a deck, like a visual deck of all the scenes. This is what I'm thinking. This is the feeling I'm reading from the script. Is this correct? And then he'll tell you 3 months before you get there. I don't think that feeling is quite right, or I'm not sure we should be using blue to represent this feeling, or something. And so by the time you get there, I really don't think that should be happening. Sometimes you do get to the set and something doesn't feel quite right, and that's okay. But I think if you both have prepared together and you both know the heart of the story, you often have that reaction at the same time. That happens a lot now. Something's not quite right. It didn't work out. The weather was wrong, something. And you both have very similar reactions to why it was wrong because you have been on the same page for so long in pre-production that it's obviously wrong. You know what I mean? It's not I like it and you don't like it. It's like we agree that this is where the movie is going. If the movie's not currently going there, it should everyone who's wired into the movie, who knows where it's going, should all at the same time say, "Wait, this doesn't feel right." Um, yeah, at the beginning, sure, because you're just trying to remake the movies you thought were fun while you were growing up. But now you're doing it for real, doing it more seriously. I don't think that really happens anymore. No.
So, what moving on, what I loved about Assi is that, you see Anubhav Sinha's evolution as a filmmaker. What surprised me about the movie, what I didn't expect while going in was, how he managed to keep you in keep you put you on this rough edge between reality and fiction. You are never immersed in the movie. While you are watching it, you are constantly made aware of the things that are happening outside. And the perfect example of this is that 20-minute reminder. It just when you think, okay, you are getting into the film, the reminder comes up and then you are taken outside. Okay, this is happening there. So he does. Most filmmakers, they try to dissolve the so-called boundaries of the screen, but Sinha, he's there. He's showing you, okay, there's the boundary. And another interesting thing, what I really loved about Assi is that, this is the kind of film that could be made by a filmmaker who believes in the power of movies, because the way he attacks this issue, this relentless attack, it only comes from someone who thinks, okay, uh, they are they are working in a medium that has some effect on the audience. But at the same time, with that 20-minute reminder, Sinha is also confessing, okay, I'm not as powerful, because even even Tapsi or any other character can make grand speeches, and that character might get the justice in the end. But the real the rapes are still happening outside. So the Sinha is both he's asserting his power, and at the same time he's confessing, okay, he's not that powerful also. So this I found it very fascinating. This really shows someone who has really evolved as a filmmaker. So before starting the now that I think you have watched the movie, you have watched the final product. So did you do you think you have achieved what you set out to do?
Yes, I think so. I mean, I can't in so many words say what did we set out to do. We wanted to make a great movie that made a lot of people sit and think about what surrounds them, at least even if it's only for 2 hours. Um, and I think that has been successful. On the point about the red screen, I think it's it's incredibly formally daring. I think it's really exciting. Um, and I think what I don't know everyone's reaction to the red screen, but people who I've talked to thought it was really interesting and effective, actually. I think we're all entering a time now, my firm belief, that people are incredibly good at watching things. I'm not saying they always pay attention to things, but the fluency with which we watch is enormous now. And I think you can challenge people to watch things in a new way in, for instance, the red screen or various other things that people do. And they'll be able to absorb these changes because there's such a huge variety of things out there that they're watching, and they're watching a lot of the time, which may be bad for other things, but I think for this purpose is helping, that you can trust them. It's not like you've taken them out of the movie for 10 seconds or however long that red screen lasts for, and then it's over and they're gone forever because they're off to do something else. It's not like that. They'll go with you. They'll go with you, you know? And I think I've never been a fan of not trusting the audience, but I'm even more not a fan of it these days because I think they're just really, really good at doing it, at being an audience. Um, and you have to let them make connections on their own, let them think on their own, which I think what the red screen does. It doesn't tell you this is happening every 20 minutes, and therefore something. It just says this is happening every 20 minutes. It's up to you now to think what you want about that. Um, Now, sorry, there's another piece about Anubhav's changing as a filmmaker or something in your question.
No, I just wanted to know that. I was just saying that he has really evolved, and I wanted to know that did you actually achieve what you set out to do? Do you feel there's anything missing, or it was okay? We have made the film we wanted to make, and it's all fine.
There's always shots you wanted to get or things you missed because you ran out of time or you decided to spend more time on one scene because it was working well. But no, I think a movie is really hard to make, and a good movie is really hard to make. And I think it's a good movie. So, no, I can't be regretful of anything, really.
It's a great movie, I would say. So, was there a scene in a scene that challenged you the most emotionally? I'm sure there might be many scenes that might have challenged you emotionally, but if you were to pick, say, one or two scenes, which would you pick?
The scene, my favorite scene in the movie is one that we thought a long time about how to do it, and we spent a long time in the detailing of it. And that is the scene where um, the boy character comes home to his family flat, and there's the vigil, and all the men are standing outside on the balcony, and all of the women are inside, um, sitting with Gunny. And I love that scene because it's not full of stuff going on. It's uh, it's just like a well of empathy. It's just full of feeling, and not full of plot, and not full of story, really. And those are rare opportunities, I think, We talked a long time about how to release the information. Is it one shot? Is it a boy's point of view? When does he come into the shot? Where do you put the shoes on the ground? All of these things that you, because it's I don't know. I was really profoundly affected by that scene when we shot it because it was not. When I read it, it wasn't like that in my head. I think maybe because I'm not of that place and I don't know exactly how these things work, and maybe life is like that for some people, but not for me, where I come from. Um, and I just found the responsibility to render that moment honestly was really serious, I thought, because it is not trickery and it's not exciting and it's not anything. It's just like all of these people sitting here and feeling something for a bit. I loved it.
So can you tell me how do you decide between handheld and stabilized shots, static shots? How do you approach them?
Uh, yeah, I have a theory on it that I've arrived at. I'm fairly clear about that in my mind in this moment. Um, I love operating handheld, but I think that handheld is most effective for being reactive. Handheld is exciting because the operator is necessarily at least one half of a thought behind the characters. And that's fun because you get to feel that the movie is unfolding in front of you right now. If you're a little bit behind the action, just a little bit. I don't find that handheld necessarily adds excitement. Like I think if a scene is uninteresting and you add handheld, the scene will remain uninteresting. It's the scene that needs to be worked on. Um, yeah, so that's basically when I reach for handheld is when I want to feel that I'm a little bit behind the action, when the author is catching up to the characters. Otherwise, I'm not really, I don't do a huge amount of action in my life. I'm not really of the world that uses handheld all of the time. I love a tripod. I love a dolly. I find that there's enough to keep track of in a dense, effective piece of drama that a camera moving at the speed of the drama and not faster than it is enough if the scene is really good.
So this is, I think, your second time working with Tapsi in Assi. So what do you think of how has your relationship with her evolved over these two movies, Mulk and now Assi? How do you see her as an actor?
Those two different things. So my relationship with her is obviously much more familiar now. Um, and we could say, how do you say? Maybe we could interact a little bit more as equals than I could the first time because the first time I was a new kid, right? I didn't know anything. So I was learning everything very quickly. Um, and there was this movie star, Tapsi Pannu, in this movie, but I was necessarily like, catching up. And I wouldn't think we had all that much interaction on the first film, and we would be work together all day long. But basically, I was probably doing as much effort as I could to keep up with my own work on that. And now I'm more fluent and more able. I can take a bit more time and get more involved in where the actor's going and that. And also, I think actors necessarily trust you more when they've worked with you more and when you've done more work. And so now, yeah, I loved working with Topsy on this. And also, I don't think it's exactly a similar role as she's done in her other courtroom stuff. This is a bit tougher and more interesting. Um, and I think I could see her having fun with it. Like I could that loss of control of the character, for example, in the scene that you spoke about when she finds the cop in the car park and she's walking away and ranting. Like I could see her having just such fun, which is great. Like when you see an actor in full flow, they're totally confident now. She's been doing it forever. She's really good at it now, and you can see that ease and that flow comes easily to her now, and that's great. Yeah.
She's an excellent actor, I
Yeah.
love her. So, ha I wanted to ask you this. Have streaming formats changed how you compose your shots? Do you think social media framing, has influenced your composition in any way? Because, everything nowadays is vertical video and
Yeah.
short form videos. So that's why I was asking.
I have to say no. Maybe I learned before it was everywhere, and so now it's sufficiently ingrained in me how I see the frame, how I see the composition as being effective. But I no, it hasn't because I don't think it's there's something mysterious about a camera angle. It's not a science, you know? Why is the I mean you can there are formal solutions. I want you to feel smaller, I want you to feel bigger, I want to be further from you or closer to you for some reason in the drama. But also there are some angles that do mysterious things to a human face. We do a lot of testing of if you have time with actors, you shoot them from lots of angles, you light them different ways to see what is feeling interesting in this moment for this scene or for this film. And by its nature, I think the analytics of social media are talking about things that already exist. That's what they're learning from. And so if they say that a close up in a 5x4 vertical frame is most likely to get engagement, that might be true, but it's also true of historical data, right? It's not true of the data going forward. So I don't trust it to be a good guide of where we're going. Um, yeah, but also I just think you can't cater to everyone everywhere, and there probably is an ideal viewer, and my ideal viewer for Assi was someone sitting in the two-thirds of the way back in the cinema with other people, and you have to treat it that way. You can't you can't shoot everything in the middle of everything because then everything becomes the same. You want this thing to be individual. And if it's going to be individual, you can't cater to what is most commonly going to trigger people's interest. It has to trigger your own interest.
Okay. So, as a cinematographer, is there any emerging technology that excites you? And is there anything that worries that you find it worrying about it at the same time?
We use the camera on Assi that I'm completely in awe of. We used this a new camera from Ronin called the 4D, 4D, for quite a lot of tracking shots, long, long tracking shots. And I just found it the most extraordinary piece of machinery. It's got a gimbal built into the camera, basically. And I just thought it was so exciting to be completely free in a small form factor. So for example, this scene that I said that I found so exciting at the vigil at Gunny's house. That shot, it's one long shot. It floats up the stairs, down a corridor, into his front yard, through a room, into another room, and every single inch of the floor is covered in people. It's completely impossible shot to do on a Technocrane, to do on a Steadicam. It's impossible. I don't know any other tool that could have done that thing in that intimate setting. So that I'm finding really exciting right now. I'm loving that camera. Um, in terms of things I'm frightened of, I don't know. I don't make that many commercials, and I think that's where AI, etc., is going to be most useful. So me personally, I don't know if it's really going to affect me that much because I don't find it likely that people are going to make movies that are any good on Higgsfield or Midjourney or whatever these things are. Um, I think people will try and make movies on them, but whether they'll be good, I haven't seen a good use case yet. I've seen some really good IKEA commercials done with AI. Um, yeah, no, I don't think so. I think the saddest thing, because where I live is in Bristol, which is like one of the centers of nonfiction filmmaking in the UK. That I find sad a little bit. The technology and efficiencies and things have meant that that world seems to be dying a little bit. It's very hard to find employment in nonfiction now. Um, and I think I watch at least half documentaries and half fiction. I don't, I watch tons of documentaries. I love them, even though I don't make very many. So that part of that effect is sad to me. But I don't think that AI is anywhere close to making a good movie. So I'm not that concerned.
Yeah, AI cannot do what humans can do, at least not yet. Even I have seen some
No.
AI videos and they are just terrible, you know. So nothing to worry about now.
Yeah.
Uh, so moving on, is there a shot in a film you wish you had filmed? And second part of this question is, if you could reshoot one project of yours, what would it be? How would you do it
Oh,
differently?
wow. Um, what do I wish I had shot? Anything in Apocalypse Now, which is the most impossible thing that I've ever seen. I don't even think it is possible. Maybe that's AI. I don't know. How did a film crew do it? I'm not sure. Um, that I find the biggest the biggest achievement in cinematography ever is that film. Because I just don't understand how they did it, and nothing digital. It's all there. um, Reshooting something I've done? No. It's hard to even watch things you've done, let alone go back and do it for 3 months again. Um, I think you got to keep looking forward. You can't you can't go back. I learned things on all of those films, but I'm happy to have learned things on those films. I don't need to go back and make that film more perfect or better. Also, I would be the one guy I because in that circumstance, I'm the one guy who's new and doing something different, but everyone else is doing something the same. I'm not sure. I just don't think it's a we were all there, the traveling circus, learning together while we shot it, and now we're all different. So, and that's good, you know.
Are not one of those people who rewatches their film to learn from it to improve themselves. You don't do that?
I think that by the time I've released a film, I've seen it so many times. You know, I filmed it, I watched the rushes that night, I looked at assemblies. I don't know how many times you see a movie in a grade, but it's got to be 10. So, yeah, I've seen like Assi, I must have seen 10 or 15 times by now, you know. So, I think I've learned things from those viewings, but I'm not certain a 16th viewing is going to teach me that much more.
Okay, so last question before I leave you, and it's how has your cinematography changed over the years, and what visual risks are you hoping to take next?
Cool question. How has it changed over the years? I think I'm trying to do less. You just try to do less. You try to do more with less. You try and do it with fewer lights. Try and make the movie with a much more reduced color palette so that you can make red really mean something. I think as you go through, it stops becoming about breadth and you're more trying to investigate depth. I want to make this thing very specifically good rather than making a lot of something. You know, making a lot of something is no longer exciting after you've done it a few times, I think. So that's how my cinematography has changed. I really interrogate and question an idea over and over until you find a really good expression of that one little idea, rather than be so excited to do a lot of something. Um, and what's the next question?
What visual risks are you hoping to take next?
I don't know about whether it's a realistic hope. You know what I really want to do now? I really want to make a really small movie on the road. I'd die to do that right now. That would be so fun. I keep trying to convince Anubhav, let's go. Let's go. 6 crew, 3 actors, and let's just go somewhere. Argentina for a month, whatever. Um, I think that's what I would like to do. That purity of filmmaking that I haven't done in a while. I would love to go back to that and see how I do that differently now. I think that'd be great.
Okay, so with that, we have come to the end. Thank you so much, Evan, for giving me your time. And I apologize to all my viewers for sounding a little awkward during the interview. You know, a bug has been disturbing me throughout this video. And I am not very good in front of the camera. I'm very shy and I start stuttering and all that. So I hope
Been great.
anyone watching. Thank you so much. But still, I have to work on it. So anyway, thank you for giving your time, and I hope to see what you do next. I'm very excited what you and Anubhav Sinha do next. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, Vikas. It's been great. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.